The LA Clippers of the 2020-21 season came as close as they have gotten to getting to the NBA Finals with the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George group, but ultimately fell short to the Phoenix Suns in the conference finals, largely in part due to injuries. They will now return heading into this next season with Kawhi Leonard injured, but will hope to have him back for the playoffs and are running it back with the same group, hoping to have similar success and get themselves into the NBA Finals in the upcoming season. That being said, I want to talk about this LA Clippers team and what I expect from them in this upcoming season, and if they can get themselves into the NBA Finals. That being said, if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new, and be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below on this LA Clippers team. As mentioned, this LA Clippers group is just pretty much running it back. There isn't too many new additions, there wasn't too many key departures. Biggest thing for the Clippers this summer was just retaining Kawhi Leonard, which was always the concern when they acquired Kawhi Leonard and Paul George a couple of years ago, was they could leave within a couple of seasons, which was pretty scary. But Kawhi, as much as you can never be fully certain what he's going to do, it did seem likely that he wanted to stay in California, and to the Clippers he has returned, has now locked up for the long term as the leader of this group. Reggie Jackson, who was arguably one of the most valuable players for them in the playoffs, especially once Kawhi went down, is now back for another couple of years, and Nick Batum has also been brought back as someone who's a very key role player for this group. The only new additions for this team is Justice Winslow, Harry Giles, and Eric Bledsoe. His return now to the Clippers, he will give them a bit of point guard depth. Justice Winslow will give them a bit of depth either as a point guard or on the wing, and then Harry Giles can be their third center. The only notable departure is Patrick Patterson, and even then it's not that notable. He did fall out of the rotation a little bit year on year over the last couple of seasons, and he is now seeing his way to Portland. So this is pretty much the same group. They're running it back. They've added a little bit of depth, but nothing notable that this team has changed. They're just running it back with the same group. Eric Bledsoe is probably the only guy they've added who's going to get significant minutes, and that's going to be about the only change in their rotation for the upcoming season, other than the fact that Kawhi Leonard will be injured for the majority of the season nonetheless. It is reported that he is ahead of schedule, but what that schedule even is a little bit unclear, other than just the general projections of an ACL injury. So he may be back before the playoffs if he is truly ahead of schedule, which would be very impactful and beneficial, of course, to the Clippers, and might actually give them a shot to be competitive in the playoffs, as opposed to just getting into the Western Conference playoffs as a non-top 4 seed, and most likely being in the bottom half of the conference, and then seeing themselves have to claw up, potentially not even with the claw. But nonetheless, if they can have him back, that obviously drastically changes the fortunes of their season. Without him, which they won't have him for the majority of the season, I would expect Nick Batum to be the starting small forward, Reggie Jackson and Paul George in the backcourt, Marcus Morris Sr. and Zubac in the front court. But they have a nice bit of depth on this team, and they have guys who can play multiple positions and have versatility. Eric Bledsoe could be at multiple guard positions. Justice Winslow could play some point guard minutes, could play some time at the 3, could play some time at the 4. He has a nice bit of versatility there. Terrence Mann will be sure to give them some minutes off of the bench as well, after he showed a lot of promise in the playoffs. Luke Kennard can continue to give them some minutes off the bench. And then Serge Ibaka can hopefully stay healthy this season, as he can be in behind Zubac and give them some very good scoring and rim protecting off of the bench, which is what they would have loved to have out of him last year. So this group is deep. They have guys who can play multiple positions. Ibaka can play the power forward spot if you need. Winslow can play multiple positions. Batum, Marcus Morris, Paul George, Terrence Mann, Eric Bledsoe. These guys can all play up or down a spot in most scenarios if need be, depending on the matchup, depending on the scenario, which is always beneficial to have. I like the depth they have on this group. I think they can have another solid defensive team. I think Eric Bledsoe adds to their defense. I think Terrence Mann can continue to be good on that end between Zubac and Ibaka. I think Paul George is going to be the most notable part of this team for this upcoming season, with Kawhi being out, which is why I do have the Clippers falling down a little bit in the regular season standings. And now if Kawhi is back in time, ready to roll for the playoffs, then this team is going to be fine in playoffs time. And along with Denver, along with the Lakers, are going to be amongst the teams to beat in the Western Conference. There's no doubt about that. But that being said, Paul George is going to have an extremely good regular season to keep them in a spot to be competitive enough in the Western Conference and be competitive enough to keep themselves in the playoffs. This could be, and I expect to be, a dark horse MVP caliber season for Paul George. He's going to have to be the guy on this team as a two-way guy, and I think this could arguably be the best season of his career. Obviously, his year in OKC a couple of years ago had him in and around that discussion, but he's going to have a similar type of high-quality year on this group to keep this team in the playoffs, because this team is a good team without Kawhi Leonard and still Paul George, no doubt about it. But this is a deep Western Conference, and so making them a solid team and keeping them out of the play-in games is going to rely on Paul George having a brilliant year. Now, no doubt about it, that's also going to have to mean Terrence Mann's going to have to take a step up. It's also going to have to mean that Eric Bledsoe is going to play an important role. It's also going to mean that Reggie Jackson's going to have to play a lot more like we saw in the playoffs and we have in the regular season throughout the last couple of years. Serge Ibaka also needs to stay healthy and give his level of production. There's a lot that needs to go right for this team, but Paul George is the biggest part, being the secondary star on this team. I do have the Clippers coming in at the 6th seed, and that ultimately has to be their goal this season, is to avoid the play-in games. If they can get Kawhi back healthy and get him into game shape and game form for the playoffs while avoiding the play-in games, that is a best case scenario. At that point in that time, then you have to beat whoever you got to beat. If you got tough first round matchups, sure, it sucks, but you got to get to beat the best teams to get to the finals and win the chip anyways. So ultimately, the best the Clippers have to hope for, and the goal for the Clippers should be get the 6th seed, get themselves into the playoffs, avoid the play-in games, and have Kawhi ready to roll for the playoffs, if possible, to keep him healthy. Obviously, you don't want to rush Kawhi back. We know his injury history. If he has to be rested and you just have to scrap this season, so be it. Kawhi is now locked up long-term. You need to preserve him for the future of his career and for the long-term success of this franchise. But ultimately, that is the ideal scenario for the LA Clippers for this upcoming season. I think they're a solid team without Kawhi, but I don't think they're a top 3, top 4 seed in the conference by any stretch. But I think Paul George and the rest of this group can keep them in top 6, avoid the play-in games, and then it's really just going to depend on the health of Kawhi. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys expected this group, what you guys think this group can do without Kawhi, and then if Kawhi's back in the playoffs, what do you expect? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you want to hear other season previews as we approach the NBA season, then be sure to click the box on the right hand side of the screen. That being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.